Hello my dear fans, you're on the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. First, we're going to start with Kherson area, where the Russians, as I see, have problems. According to information we have, during the previous days, as a result of clashes, as a result of landing operation, as a result of reconnaissance operations, sabotage operations, the Ukrainians managed to establish some bridgehead on the Russian side of the Dnieper River in the village by the name of Krynky. Currently, and yet we don't know the exact combat line, the exact Ukrainian positions. The only thing we have just a few geolocations and update from the Russian side that as a result of situation, as a result of negative developing of the situation in this area, the Russians even were forced to change the commander and to bring additional reserves to stabilize the front line. For example, during the previous night we got the video how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions with tossed flamethrower systems. And we understand that this is the pattern. We know that this is the Russian pattern. Every time the Russians use a tossed flamethrower system against this or that settlement, that can mean just one thing, that there are no more Russians inside of this village or this or that settlement. So basically, that video of tossed flamethrower strike was geolocated. We can't say for sure whether the Russians left the entire part of this village, because the village is very long from Zaporizhzhia, Lahiri to Kherson, a few kilometers, but the central part is no longer under Russian control. Later we got another video from this area. That video was geolocated. On this video we can see how the Russian soldiers were withdrawing their positions from the central part of Krynky, and the Russians were heading to the forest that located on the south of this village. At some point of this video, for some reason, the Russian soldiers took a decision to stop and basically to have to establish their short positions, let's say on the interception of the road right in front of the forest. For some reason, they took a decision not to move further. Later, we realized why the Russians did that, and we got another video from the Ukrainian side how the Ukrainians made an ambush or created an ambush for the Russians, and exactly on this area the Ukrainians destroyed that entire Russian storm or reconnaissance squad. So one more time, just to understand, the Russians were moving along this road using just an infantry. On this area they stopped and for some reason took a decision to create a small camp right in front of the forest. And after that the Ukrainian FPV drones, like operators and FPV drones, destroyed the Russian forces in this area. What does it mean? First of all, we need to understand that now, at least after a few days, after a few weeks of clashes, we start realizing the real Ukrainian purposes of this attack and why the Ukrainians took a decision why the Ukrainians chose Krynky and Kherson as the main cities and villages for the Ukrainian landing operation. Obviously, the most important target for the Ukrainians is to establish control over the forests that located on the south of these two villages. This is the first area the Ukrainians obviously want to take control over. And this is the second area the Ukrainians obviously want to take control over. So these are forests, and if the Ukrainians are able to do this, we all everybody understand that the situation in Krynky, Kherson, in Kherson area will be the same as in Kryminaya forest. We know Kryminaya forest is the strongest fortification area from both sides, either for the Russians for the Ukrainians, and neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are able to change the situation in that forest. The only solution is to encircle Kryminaya forest. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, we are talking about the area that located on the north of Seversky Donetsk River on Liman-Tarskay Silen. So nobody can advance or have some progress. So and because of the forest, because of let's say a very perfect let's say natural barrier, natural position where you can hide your forces from drones, artillery forces, and so on. So the Ukrainians are trying to do the same. And if the Ukrainians can capture these two forests, of course the Russians will have more problems, and the Russian artillery forces will be forced to move further from the shore, from the bank of the river, and then the Ukrainians will be able to establish like a stable foothold with a significant number of forces and with additional point of pressure against the Russian positions in Kherson direction. So we'll see what the Russians are going to do next. When talking about the second foothold in the vicinity of Pridniprovsk, the Russians continue bombardments of Ukrainian positions. So basically, this area repeat the story of the small settlement by the name of Dachi that located along Antonov Bridge. The Russians were forced to step back. The Ukrainians maybe managed to capture, maybe managed to create some footholds and trenches and fortifications or shelters. And after that, the only thing the Russians were doing were bombardments and attacks, not to allow, with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to develop their positions. So we're gonna follow Krynky situation, because as I understand, currently the Russians haven't managed to stop the negative trend, the negative development of the situation. Now we're moving further to Zaporizhzhia area. Currently there are very heavy clashes. The Ukrainians, after a few days of operational pause, restarted their activity, mainly using just regular infantry without any support of armored vehicles. And for example, on this video we can see how the Ukrainian soldiers try to evacuate from or work around the abandoned destroyed tank, but all the Ukrainian soldiers were destroyed during that process. Another video we got from Verbova, more and more FPV drone strikes and bombardments of Ukrainian forces in the trenches without any progress for them. On the north, the Russians managed to discover during the previous night, the previous 48 hours, another ammo depot among the fields, and as a result of strike, the operational ammo depot was destroyed. More updates are coming from Donetsk area. Nothing special. The Russians continue bombardments of Novomikhailivka using FAB. The Russians are calling this situation "Good Morning FABs" for Novomikhailivka. Almost every single day we get the same videos from the central part. Yet the Russians haven't started any active movements in direction of the village from the south or from the north. The Ukrainian sources published a very interesting video below from Avdiivka. On this video we can see the tunnels below Avdiivka, and this video was made by the Ukrainian soldiers, by the Ukrainian forces. So as you can see that the Russians, yesterday we discussed the video how they made a tunnel below the Ukrainian fortifications and blow them up, and as I understand, Avdiivka is not this is going to be a little bit different type of war, different type of battle, and the situation of Avdiivka probably will remind us the battle in Gaza. Like, there are going to be a lot of underground clashes between Russian and Ukrainian forces, which will lead to significant losses from both sides. The Russians shouldn't enter the underground facilities of Avdiivka. Probably they don't have any other option. They need to find a solution how to, let's say, shoot down and destroy all these tunnels with the Ukrainian forces inside. If the Russians take a decision to enter tunnels, this is going to be Gaza number 2. Some updates are coming from Bakhmut direction. The Russian forces currently, after they managed to develop some positions in the vicinity of railways and the reserve, try to develop them, continue development process. And on this video we can see how the Russians were bombing with FPV drones the Ukrainian positions in these tree lines, and basically the current Russian target in this area is to a little bit maintain the gray zone and to get closer to the main supply road that goes from Khromovo to Chasov Yar. So everything has started from the beginning on this direction. Very interesting updates are coming from Kiev itself, from the entire Ukrainian situation. As you know, the Zelensky, there is like very interesting article was published by NBC, and according to information we have, the Western countries started some negotiation process with Russians and about the upcoming and possible about peace negotiations. And obviously this article was published not to discover about any, let's say, negotiation process, but to test and to check the reaction of Russians and Ukrainians. And we start receiving some reactions from Ukrainian side that they're not going to sign any peace agreements with the Russians until they will move their forces. So a very difficult situation, very complicated. Of course, the Western countries have some power to force the Ukrainians to start negotiations. For example, these days we receive another update regarding the upcoming military aid to Ukraine, and this is probably the minimal military aid since the beginning of the special military operation. There are very big part for air defense, but a very low part for the infantry and forces and the fightings on the ground. So we'll see, but if you ask my opinion, I would say that the Russians currently are not interested in any peace negotiations. The Russians need to solve the issues not for 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years. The Russians need to solve the problem with the Ukrainians for thousands of years. They need to take and return Ukraine into the area of influence of Russia. Any peace agreements that can be signed, that let's say this winter, will save the current situation. The Russians will probably get the territories that have already captured, but the Ukrainians will still have possibilities to join NATO, European Union. They will still have possibilities to modernize, to collect army, to create new military technologies, to build new military bases on the ground, and in 20 years to start everything from the beginning. And this is not the case that the Russians want. They need to solve the issue of Ukraine for thousands of years. And we'll see what is going to be next. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.